Welcome, everyone. I'm Kia Sims. Thank you for joining us as we kick off our first Hot Call Summer 2.0 conversation today with EARTHGANG, Nsé Ufot, and Briante McCorkle. I'd like to start us off tonight with a short video to introduce you to or refresh your memory about Fair Fight Action's Hot Call Summer. Take a look. Like the video says, we've been calling, texting, and organizing with a renewed vigor since we launched the second leg of Hot Call Summer. Now that we all know what our mission here is, I want to introduce you to our incredible MCs for the evening, EARTHGANG. Wild Great and Olu are Grammy-nominated artists from our very own Atlanta, Georgia. Today, EARTHGANG will walk us through a conversation about protecting our democracy within Georgia and across the country with CEO of New Georgia Project Action Fund, Nsé Ufot. Then I'll be joined by Briante McCorkle to talk about the similarities between the fight for the freedom to vote and the fight for a livable future. I'm honored to pass the mic to EARTHGANG, who will get us started.
Since Fair Fight Action kicked off Hot Call Summer, volunteers just like the people who showed up tonight made over 40,000 calls to their senators. This is huge. And this helped push Democrats into the U.S. Senate to get all on the same page before last month's vote to bring For the People Act to the floor for debate. Securing Democratic unity on For the People Act is a very major victory, but the fight is far from over. This is why Fair Fight Action launched Hot Call Summer 2.0. We're going to keep calling, texting, organizing, and we're doing everything we can to make sure our U.S. senators pass federal voting rights and pass federal voting rights legislation like For the People Act.
Tonight is the first in a series of live virtual events. Fair Fight Action has organized for Hot Call Summer 2.0 to help educate and mobilize voters in support of the For the People Act. Like Kia mentioned, tonight we're going to talk about democracy, the obstacles Republican legislators are setting up to make it harder to make our voices heard, and what solutions we need to protect our freedom to vote. We have a couple of special guests with us tonight, and I'm so excited for you to hear them. I'd like to welcome the CEO of New Georgia Project Action Fund, Nsé Ufot. The U rhymes with you. Nsé, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Listen, thank you for having me. Mays High Raiders in the building.
Okay. Southwest Atlanta.
Yes, there we go. I'm super proud of y'all. I'm a huge fan, and I love that y'all are not only like leading as innovators and as creatives, but just also as citizens and people who care about the place that we live in. So super happy to be here with y'all. Shout out to y'all.
Bless. Appreciate you, Nsé. Nsé, you've been talking to, registering, and mobilizing voters for a long time with the New Georgia Project. What stories have you heard from Georgia voters that have had problems voting because of long lines at the polls and poll closures? And how did these problems affect the people?
Yeah, I think that, Georgia is a state that's growing super rapidly. And the thing about the rate at which Georgia is growing is that demographics are changing in the entire country. That a lot has been written about the fact that by 2050, America's going to be majority people of color. Where that date is 2024, 2025 for Georgia. That the growth is massive. Nearly 2 million people have moved here in the past over a decade. Most of them are people of color. And so what we're seeing is crazy long lines at polls, particularly in communities that are Black or multiracial or gentrifying. And as someone that works to get people to vote every day, it doesn't take a lot for people to make a cost benefit analysis and determine, you know what, it's not worth it. You're an hourly wage worker. You got to clock in and clock out. You're seeing 8, 9, 10-hour lines. Like, people can easily be like, I have to pick up my kids. I have work to do. I'm not missing a whole day's wages to vote. Right. So it depresses turnout and makes people not want to participate because of all these trash and unnecessary hurdles that are placed and interfering with people's ability to participate in our democracy. They had in 2018, we're talking about voting machines with no plugs, like no power cords. We're talking about, again, folks, 8, 9, 10-hour lines. We're talking about, voting machines being stolen because they were in the back of an election worker's car. And so all of these things help attack people's faith in the process. It's all intentional and it's all by design. And so what we do is to make sure that people know what the jig is, know how they are being finessed, know that they're trying to make it more difficult because they want you to stay home, and folks are prepared. When you see the BS coming, you know how to respond.
Okay, those are all great points. So like what about like mail-in voting, voted by mail? A lot of old and new voters use it for the last year. I know I used it for the first time last year. So like, how have voters talked to you about what it'll mean for them if they're able to pass federal legislation requiring ballot drop boxes, requiring states to track and confirm the receipt of ballots, and offering like prepaid postage and things like that?
Well, first of all, I mean, we are okay. So while, despite the fact that Atlanta was open and then open, we were legit in the middle of a pandemic. And so a lot of states passed vote by mail as a way to allow people to participate in elections safely. Right. And it was the safest way to vote in 2020, safe in terms of managing your exposure to the virus, but also safe in terms of having a paper trail, like you know how you voted and you know that you turned it in. Right. And the drop boxes were convenient, that you didn't have to go inside the polling location, that you could just drop them off. The new law that was passed at the beginning of the year limits the number of drop boxes that any county can have. So now, instead of Fulton having 100 drop boxes where you could go anywhere and drop off your ballot, they are limiting it to 1 drop box per 100,000 voters, right? So that's going to dramatically limit the number of people, drop boxes that are available to people, making it less convenient. Mm-hmm. Again, there's no real reason to do it other than to make it more difficult for people to vote.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. So, what kinds of voters do you see having these problems? Like, are these patterns focused in a specific community? Like, they're limiting statewide, but you know, do our communities have like smaller drop boxes or like lesser access and things like that?
Well, I mean, they're going after Fulton, DeKalb, the largest counties in the state, also the blackest counties in the state. And so a lot of the language, right? So the way that the bill is written, they don't mention race at all. But guess what? If you go after Fulton and DeKalb County, you're going to impact a significant number of Black voters. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're seeing. Also in what is known as the rural Georgia and what's known as the Black Belt, there's still a bunch of cities and counties in Georgia that are majority Black and brown folks that have never had a Black mayor, never have a Latina serve on the school board, et cetera. So there are a ton of places where the government leadership isn't reflective of the community that they serve. And those are also some of the places where we see the shenanigans around voting and drop boxes.
So like in your work with New Georgia Project, you and your team have spent a lot of time educating new voters. How do you talk about the way state legislators have begun restricting access to the ballots, like with SB 202 here in Georgia? And like, how do people respond without feeling overwhelmed? Like, what's the best way?
Well, our message to people is super simple. They scared. You know, in our community, they have the same, like, if you scared, say you scared. And the way that they passed Senate Bill 202 is a clear sign that they are afraid of the future, right? That Georgia, like America, is going to be a multiracial, multi-ethnic, multilingual, multi-generational progressive majority, right? And so right now, we are in fact governed by a pale, male, and stale minority, right? They're in the minority and they know it. And so while there are a bunch of us that are excited about what the new Georgia, what the new America is going to look like, there are some people who are afraid. And they're doing everything in their power to hold on to power. I tell people, like, if you've ever had a partner or you were dating somebody and they knew that they were about to get dumped and they start wiling out and acting out, or you had a coworker that knew that they were about to get fired and they start stealing office supplies, showing up to work late, right? Just not caring. Like, that is what we're seeing with this current version of the Republican Party, that they know that people aren't buying into their ideas. Fewer and fewer people are not buying into their ideas. People are still having babies and you can't fight the future. And so what are they doing? Trying to cheat. So that they can hold on to power for just a little bit longer. And so my message to everyone, all voters, particularly the people that we organize with, is they're afraid for a reason, because you're powerful and because your vote is powerful. So make them, like, show them that they're right? Like, show up to vote and flex your power every opportunity that you get, that we have the power to hire and fire elected officials. They work for us, so we should start acting like it.
Great points.
Yeah, that's great. When you're talking to the voters, I imagine that protecting the environment and stopping climate change is on people's minds. It's definitely on our minds all the time, around the clock, especially with the natural disasters, you know, in the Gulf and out west this summer. How do we connect our fight to have our voices heard with our commitment to bold action on climate change? Like, how do we bridge that to make that work for all of us?
Well, first of all, I think that we need to also start telling the truth, that there are young people and also Black folks, people of color, that know and understand that climate change is real, right? And that you don't have to have a PhD in atmospheric science to know that these once in a century, once in a decade storms are happening every couple of years, right? That if you are a dock worker down in Savannah and you work getting stuff off of the ships and onto 18-wheelers so that they can go to Target in Atlanta and Walmart in Albany, and when there's a crazy hurricane and the docks get shut down and you off of work for 2 weeks, those folks, blue collar workers, regular everyday people, know that climate change is real. And so when it's time to elect officials, we gotta elect people that understand science. Or even if you don't understand science, understand what your eyes are showing you. That climate change is on the table. There's a saying that we don't inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children, right? And so it's young people that are like, you're gonna be dead soon. Don't destroy the one earth that we got. Like, Jeff Bezos is not inviting me to go to the moon with him, right? Like, there's no Earth 2 that we get to go to. And so I think that young people's activism, but all of us sort of acting like this is the existential threat that it is, and making sure that it shows up in our policy, in our elections, that school board members should have an opinion about climate change. Mayors should have an opinion about climate change.
Yeah.
All should have opinions about climate change and figuring out what we can do to stop it.
Yeah. Groups like the New Georgia Project have been organizing year after year to fight voter suppression. You guys have been stepping up time and time again, but it seems like you shouldn't have to. I know it's exhausting. How can we take some of the burden off protecting democracy off the shoulders of people like us? And how should institutions like the actual federal government take some of the responsibility?
You need to call your senator. Now, in Georgia, we're fortunate. We got Raphael Warnock, Reverend Warnock, and John Ossoff. John Ossoff was elected to the United States Senate when he was 33 years old. So we sent a 33-year-old Jewish kid from the North Side to the United States Senate. when the majority of the Senate was born before there were even 50 states, right? And so my thing is, facts, all facts, right? So my thing is, we have representatives in Congress who understand the importance of this moment. And so, but there are other states that don't, right? So if you're not in Georgia, you absolutely must call your senator. And if you are in Georgia, Warnock and Ossoff need to hear from you, because they need to be leading from the front, right? That this is not an issue that you can be passive about or silent about. And so that's the one thing that, that's one, call your senator and tell them to pass the For the People Act. Like, it has to happen. We need a federal standard for elections, right? There's some states where you got 15 days of early voting. States like Mississippi, there's no days of early voting, right? There's some states where you can register to vote and vote on the same day. Georgia's not one of those states. It's nuts. And the ways that they are able, again, to hold on to power, despite the fact that fewer and fewer people want them there, is because they can cheat, they can manipulate the rules, right? So we need a federal standard for elections. All 50 states, Puerto Rico, Washington, D.C., Guam, everybody conduct their elections in the same way. And that, the For the People Act will make that happen. And so we need to call our senators and tell them to do their jobs.
All right. The last question was, how can people listening to this conversation get involved? But this is the answer, right?
That's not the answer to me.
This sounds like
call them up.
Call your senators and tell them to pass the For the People Act. Insay, thank you so much. What a beautiful name.
You have a super cool name, bro.
Thank you so much for spending time with us tonight and for all the important work you and the New Georgia Project team are doing. Now, we'd like to bring back Kia to introduce our next guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Insay and Earth Gang. So, okay, y'all, we gotta make sure we can vote. That much is clear. We know this is essential for our democracy, but it's our job to help people understand what that means and what's really at stake. We need to elect leaders who share our values and will take action on the issues that matter to our communities, from access to clean water to the ability to lead healthy lives in our neighborhoods, to saving the literal planet. Now, we want to bring in Briante McCorkle to talk more about the intersection between democracy and other issues we care about, like climate policy, especially when it comes down to personal responsibility versus the responsibilities of institutions like Congress. Briante, thank you for joining us. So, the fight for the freedom to vote and the fight for a healthy and livable planet are obviously very connected. We have to make sure that young people who we're leaving this planet to, and communities of color and working class folks who are often on the front lines of the climate crisis, aren't silenced by the Republican state legislatures passing bills like SB 202 to try to erect as many obstacles as possible to push access to the ballot out of reach. The stakes are so high. So, Briante, how do anti-voter laws like SB 202 and others around the country affect those who want to make their voices heard in order to help shape climate policy? How do those barriers to voting access stop our country from achieving progress on climate change?
Yeah, I mean, it's simple. It's people's voices being shut down at the polls. They can't elect the leaders that are going to do the right thing on climate and make sure that in doing the right thing, that the money and the funding and the solutions goes to the people that need it most. Most Georgians, most people in Georgia believe that climate change is happening. As Insay said, it's happening right now. It's impacting people's friends, family members, their moms, their grandmas, right, are being impacted by these superstorms, these massive flooding events, droughts, wildfires. All this stuff is coming to the state, and it's happening, and it's impacting people's lives right now. So most people in Georgia are like, you know what, this is something that we need to do something about, and our leaders need to be doing more about it. They believe folks in Washington and here in the state need to be doing something about it. But when you're in the halls of city halls or in the state capitol, our elected officials say, well, the voters don't, we don't hear from the voters. But voters are showing up to the polls, and now they're just upset and they're trying to suppress us from showing up to the polls. We're saying we don't want this future that has harmed us, that has brought harm to our community, poisoned our water, destroyed our air. It's impacting Black communities of color far more. We know this. We don't want this to happen anymore. We need elected officials who are in place, who are going to do the right thing, pass the right policies, and get us the funding we need to be able to be resilient to whatever happens, to be able to bounce back after disasters, to protect ourselves. That's what we need. We need elected officials who are committed to investing in that future. And when we can't vote, when they stop us from voting, they're trying to shut that down. They don't want to hear that. They have a future in mind that they want that doesn't include a healthy future for all of us. So we have to go out. We got to keep voting. We let them be scared. Let's keep them scared. Let's keep showing up, and let's show up and down the ballot, because these local races have so much impact on climate and also just your life, your health, your well-being. We have a public service commission race, for example. It's on the ballot. You elect them. They were the third seat on the runoff in January. These folks make decisions about your power bills every day, how much you're paying every month. They're making that decision, and you get to elect them. And right now they're talking about raising your bills again, y'all, raising your bills again. And they're doing this to pay for dirty energy that's polluting your communities, coal, natural, just burning all the smoke that you're breathing in. So we got to get elected officials who are going to stop that nonsense in place. We got to go out. We got to vote for even the down ballot positions. Warnock and Ossoff are in DC doing great work. They're directing millions of dollars for our communities, and we need good elected officials in place to make sure that that money goes to the right place. So that's why we got to vote. And that's why suppressing the vote is hurting the climate movement.
So I want to end our time together tonight talking about what solutions look like. We touched a little on this concept with INSEE, but I want to know what similarities you as a climate activist see between the fight for democracy and the climate crisis. We hear a lot about what we as individuals should do to combat climate change: carpool, use public transit, but energy efficient appliances, recycle, and all of those great steps that we can take. But if our federal government doesn't change policy to stop climate change, how much can we as really individuals do on our own? And why are we expected to bear the burden when government isn't doing their part?
Because they're not doing their part. They don't want to be held accountable. They're like, oh, no, it's on you. It's on you. Because they set up the laws. They set up the system that let it get this bad. Right? They just let that go on. And then, so the system is a system that allows people to pollute, to dump in our water, to dump in our air, to put all kinds of carbon into the atmosphere. And they said, well, it's okay. We know that's a cost. We know that's a problem, but we'll just deal with it. We'll let future generations deal with it. We don't have to deal with it now. But hey, look, the future's here. It's impacting us now. We done had about 100 years of that mindset, right? And so it's kicking in, and we got to stop it. And so the system of laws that we have let that pollution keep going. So we need to change the laws. Why is it okay to burn a bunch of coal in a Black community? Why is it okay to let all of that waste into our air? Why is it okay to take it, put it in water, and let it leak into our groundwater? That's okay in Georgia right now. Our elected officials have said that's okay. And it's not. It's absolutely unacceptable. We need them to change the laws. We need more clean energy. We need them to make sure that the water is protected and that people can't put pollution out into the air. And these are the solutions. Electricity in particular is the biggest solution in Georgia. I don't know about y'all, but it's hot outside. The sun is bright. We have the opportunity to invest in a lot of solar, a lot of wind, but right now our laws make it easy to invest in dirty energy. It makes it okay for the companies that are making those decisions to invest in dirty energy. So we got to get voting. And when we're voting, we need to ask our elected officials, where are you on the environment? What are you going to do to clean up the air, clean up the water, protect us from this changing climate? How are you investing in our community in case something bad happens? How do we bounce back? Because there's never enough disaster relief funding because these storms are coming through, right? These are things we need to be talking to our elected officials about, telling them the stories about how this is touching us and our communities and the people that we love. That's what they need to hear. So when you're calling your senator, you're reaching out, asking for the For the People Act, tell them you want investments in climate. Tell them you want them to prioritize the environment, the health of people who depend on it.
Thank you so very much, Briante, for your time and expertise and making the connections between these two extremely important topics. It's been really great talking to you. So with that, I will pass the mic back over to Earth Gang to close us out.
Now, before we wrap up, we want to make sure that everybody leaving here today knows what they can do to encourage our elected officials to deliver the type of long-lasting institutional change we know we need. So remember, call your senators every single day this summer and demand that they pass the For the People Act immediately. The number is 888-453-3211. That's 888-453-3211. Write it down, share it with all your friends, call every day, blow their phone up. If you want a reminder to call your senators to be text to you daily, text democracy to 33339. I hope I got 33339. Text democracy to that number. And finally, keep an eye out for Fair Fight Action's next live event. You can sign up for our email list and follow us on all platforms, Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, to stay in the loop.
We want to once again thank Nsé Ufah and Briante McCorkle for joining us, as well as all of you for taking the time tonight and every day this hot call summer to help save democracy. Hit your senator up, blow their phone up. You know what we got to do.
We are Earth Gang, and we appreciate you guys' time.